The quiet year that changes everything. Most years don't change our lives. They pass quietly. We make plans in January, we lose focus by March, and by December we tell ourselves, next year will be different. But once in a while, a year arrives that doesn't demand loud action. It asks for quiet honesty. 2026 is not a year for chasing more. It's a year for thinking better, because the truth is simple. Your future isn't shaped by one big decision. It's shaped by the small habits you repeat when nobody is watching. This audiobook isn't about getting rich fast. It's not about hacks, shortcuts, or overnight success. It's about how people actually change, slowly, imperfectly, honestly. These are 10 habits that don't just improve your results, they rewire how you think, how you decide, how you wait, and how you define a good life. Think of this as a conversation with a friend who's lived long enough to make mistakes and patient enough to learn from them. Let's begin. Chapter 0. One Stop rushing the outcome. There is a quiet pressure most people carry, even if they never talk about it. The pressure to arrive quickly. The pressure to prove something. The pressure to show results before they truly exist. It starts early. We are taught that faster is better, that success should be visible, that if something is not working quickly, it must not be working at all. But life doesn't work that way. Some of the most important things in life grow slowly, almost invisibly, and rushing them doesn't make them arrive sooner. It usually makes them weaker. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I watched someone I deeply respected move from one opportunity to the next. Every year, a new plan, a new direction, a new beginning. From the outside, it looked ambitious, productive, driven. But underneath, there was impatience, not impatience with work, but impatience with time. Every time progress felt slow, he assumed something was wrong. Every time results didn't show up quickly, he changed course. Years later, he wasn't behind because he failed. He was behind because he never stayed long enough for anything to compound. That's when it becomes clear. Rushing is often disguised as ambition. But real ambition understands delay. In 2026, one of the most powerful habits you can build is learning how to let outcomes take longer than your emotions want them to. Because emotions want speed. Wisdom wants stability. When you rush outcomes, you don't just rush success, you rush decisions. And rushed decisions are rarely good ones. You say yes too quickly. You quit too early. You chase clarity before it has time to form. The uncomfortable truth is this: most progress feels like nothing for a long time. That's why most people quit. They confuse silence with failure. They mistake slowness for weakness. But the strongest foundations are built quietly. Think about trust. Think about skill. Think about reputation. None of these things can be rushed without being damaged. In wealth, in relationships, in personal growth, speed creates fragility. Patience creates resilience, and patience is not passive. Patience is active restraint. It's waking up every day and choosing consistency over excitement. It's continuing when nobody claps. It's doing the boring work long after motivation fades. The world rewards visible speed. Life rewards quiet endurance. In 2026, practice slowing down your timeline, not your effort. Stop asking, why isn't this working yet? Start asking, am I giving this enough time to work at all? Because time is not your enemy. Impatience is. There's another cost to rushing outcomes that few people talk about. When you rush, you become emotionally fragile. Every setback feels dramatic. Every delay feels personal. Every obstacle feels like proof you chose wrong. But when you expect things to take time, setbacks lose their power. They become part of the process, not signs of failure. Long-term thinkers don't panic easily. They understand that progress is uneven. They don't judge a day, they judge a direction, and this mindset changes everything. It changes how you handle mistakes. It changes how you handle uncertainty. It changes how you handle yourself. Because when you stop rushing outcomes, you stop rushing your life. You begin to notice something surprising. You make better decisions when you're calm. You listen more. You react less. You choose based on values instead of fear. This is where freedom quietly begins. Not financial freedom, mental freedom. The freedom of not needing immediate proof that you're doing okay. The freedom of trusting yourself enough to stay the course. In 2026, let others chase speed. Let them jump early. Let them quit quickly. You will be doing something far more powerful. You will be staying with your habits, staying with your learning, staying with your growth even when it feels slow, especially when it feels slow, because slow progress that continues beats fast progress that stops, always. So here is the habit to carry forward. Give meaningful things more time than feels comfortable. Not forever, not blindly, but long enough for reality to reveal itself. And before we move on, pause for a moment and ask yourself this honestly. Where in your life are you rushing not because it's urgent, but because you're afraid of waiting? Sit with that question, because the answer might quietly change how your entire year unfolds. Chapter 0: To detach yourself. Worth from results. There is a quiet mistake many intelligent, hardworking people make. They don't measure their value by who they are. They measure it by what they achieve. If things go well, they feel confident. If things go badly, they feel small. Over time, this becomes exhausting because results are unstable. They rise and fall. They appear and disappear, and when your self-worth depends on something unstable, your peace disappears with it. I once met someone who seemed successful by every external standard. People admired him. His work was respected. His progress looked impressive, but privately he lived on edge. Every win brought relief, not joy. Every loss brought shame, not learning. Why? Because he didn't see results as feedback. He saw them as judgment. When things worked, he felt worthy. When they didn't, he felt exposed. This is one of the most common traps of modern life. We are taught, subtly and constantly, that outcomes define us. Grades, income, views, followers, approval. But here's the truth most people never pause to consider. Results don't measure your character. They measure timing, context, and probability. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. Sometimes you do very little and still win. That's not unfairness. That's reality. In 2026, one of the most freeing habits you can develop is learning how to separate who you are from what happened. This doesn't mean you stop caring about results. It means you stop letting them decide your identity, because when outcomes define you, fear quietly takes over. You become afraid to try new things, afraid to fail publicly, afraid to look foolish, so you choose what feels safe instead of what feels meaningful. But growth doesn't live in safety. It lives in honesty. Detaching yourself worth from results changes how you experience failure. Failure stops being a verdict. It becomes information. It stops saying, "You are not enough." It starts saying, "This approach didn't work this time." That difference matters more than most people realize. When your worth is stable, your mind becomes clearer. You think better under pressure. You recover faster from mistakes. You take smarter risks because you are no longer trying to protect your ego. You are trying to learn. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this habit. It's the confidence of someone who knows, "I can fail without falling apart." That confidence is rare and powerful. Most people don't fear hard work. They fear the emotional cost of failure, so they stay stuck in the same job, the same habits, the same thinking. But the people who grow in any area of life are not fearless. They are stable. They know that effort matters even when outcomes disappoint. In 2026, begin measuring yourself differently. Instead of asking, "Did this work?" ask, "Did I show up honestly?" Instead of asking, "Did I win?" ask, "Did I act with integrity?" This shift feels small, but it changes everything, because effort is always within your control. Outcomes never fully are. You control how prepared you are, how patient you remain, how thoughtfully you decide. You don't control timing. Luck, other people. When you judge yourself by effort, life becomes lighter. You stop replaying mistakes endlessly. You stop attaching shame to learning. You stop quitting because of embarrassment, and something surprising happens. You perform better, not because you're trying harder, but because you're calmer. Calm minds make better decisions. Calm people last longer. This is especially important when it comes to wealth, freedom, and long-term success. People who tie their self-worth to money often make desperate choices. They chase quick validation. They panic during uncertainty. They abandon patience at the worst possible moments. But people who see money as a tool, not a mirror, behave differently. They think long-term. They accept slow progress. They don't need constant proof that they're winning. They understand that dignity is not deposited in a bank account. In 2026, practice this habit gently. When something doesn't work, resist the urge to label yourself. When something succeeds, resist the urge to inflate yourself. Stay steady. You are not your best moment, and you are not your worst one. You are the person who keeps going in between. And that's where real strength lies. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself this quietly and honestly. What result am I using as proof that I matter? And then ask, what would change if I stopped doing that? Sit with those questions. Because when your worth becomes independent of outcomes, you stop living defensively. You start living deliberately. And that is one of the most powerful mindset shifts you can make in 2026. Chapter 0, 3 Think in Years, Not Days. Most frustration comes from a simple misunderstanding. We expect long-term results from short-term effort. We live in a world that measures everything in days, daily progress, daily numbers, daily reactions, and slowly, without noticing, we begin thinking the same way. If something doesn't improve quickly, we assume it's broken. If effort doesn't pay off soon, we doubt the path. But meaningful change rarely works on a daily schedule. It works on a yearly one. I once spoke to someone who felt completely stuck. He said he had been trying for months to improve his life, but nothing seemed to change. When I asked what he had been doing, his answer was honest and revealing. "I've been checking results every day." That was the problem. Daily progress is invisible in most important areas of life. No one becomes wiser in a week. No one builds trust in a month. No one creates freedom in a season. These things grow slowly, quietly, and unevenly. The habit that changes everything in 2026 is learning to stretch your time horizon. Stop asking daily questions. Start asking long ones. Instead of, "Did today change anything?" ask, "Am I moving in the right direction this year?" This shift alone can reduce anxiety dramatically, because when you think in days, every delay feels like failure. When you think in years, delays become expected. Long-term thinking doesn't make you passive, it makes you patient, and patience is not about waiting, it's about enduring without panic. Most people abandon good plans because they underestimate how long progress takes. They start something meaningful with short-term expectations. When reality doesn't match those expectations, they quit. Not because the plan was wrong, but because the timeline was unrealistic. In 2026, build the habit of allowing time to work for you, not against you. Think of time as an ally. Compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to learning, to habits, to reputation, to trust. Small actions repeated consistently over long periods become powerful, but only if you stay long enough to see it happen. Long-term thinkers don't obsess over daily motivation. They focus on direction. They understand that some days feel unproductive yet still contribute to progress, because growth is not linear. It comes in waves, plateaus, sudden jumps, and those jumps only happen because of the quiet days that came before them. Another benefit of thinking in years is emotional stability. Short-term thinkers ride emotional roller coasters. They feel great one week and defeated the next. Long-term thinkers stay steadier. They don't overreact to good news. They don't collapse under bad news. They know today is just one data point. This mindset creates better decision-making. When you're not desperate for immediate results, you take smarter risks. You choose sustainable paths instead of flashy ones. You invest energy where it matters most. And most importantly, you stop measuring your life by speed. In wealth, this matters deeply. People who think in days want quick proof. People who think in years build lasting security. The first group chases excitement. The second group builds freedom. Freedom is not about fast wins. It's about having time on your side. In 2026, slow your expectations, not your effort. Show up daily, but judge yourself yearly. Let months be messy. Let weeks be uneven. What matters is whether your life is pointing in the right direction over time. There is a quiet relief in this habit. You stop asking, "Why hasn't this worked yet?" You start asking, "Am I becoming the kind of person this goal requires?" Because identity grows before results do. And when identity shifts, results follow naturally. Before we move on, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself this honestly. Am I judging my life by days or by direction? And then ask, what would change if I allowed myself more time to grow? Sit with those questions, because the moment you begin thinking in years instead of days, your mind slows down. And when your mind slows down, your decisions improve. That is how long-term thinking quietly rewires your mindset in 2026. Chapter 04. Get comfortable with uncertainty. Most people don't struggle because they make bad decisions. They struggle because they wait too long to make any decision at all. Not because they are lazy, but because they want certainty. They want guarantees before they move. They want clear outcomes before they begin. They want reassurance that things will work out. But life rarely offers that. Every meaningful path carries uncertainty. Every worthwhile change involves risk. And yet, many people stay stuck not because they chose wrong, but because they refuse to choose without certainty. I once met someone who spent years planning a change. Different options, different scenarios, endless thinking. From the outside, it looked like preparation, but underneath it was fear carefully disguised as caution, fear of choosing wrong, fear of regret, fear of not knowing. In 2026, one of the most important habits you can build is learning how to live with uncertainty without freezing. Because uncertainty is not a problem to solve. It is a condition to accept. Life doesn't move in straight lines. It moves through probability, timing, and chance. And the people who grow are not the ones who eliminate uncertainty. They are the ones who make peace with it. Confidence is often misunderstood. People think confident individuals are certain. They're not. They are comfortable not knowing. They understand that clarity comes after action, not before it. Most of the time, the path becomes clear only once you start walking. In 2026, practice this habit. Make decisions with incomplete information, not recklessly, not emotionally, but thoughtfully and without waiting for perfect clarity. Because perfect clarity doesn't exist. If you wait until fear disappears, you will wait forever. And here's something important to understand. Uncertainty doesn't mean danger, it means possibility. Every opportunity you admire today was once uncertain. Every person you respect once stood at a crossroads with no guarantees. The difference is simple: they moved anyway. People who avoid uncertainty often tell themselves they are being careful, but what they are really doing is protecting their comfort. Comfort feels safe, but it rarely leads anywhere new. Growth requires stepping into situations where outcomes are unknown. This applies to money, to relationships, to personal growth. The habit isn't eliminating risk. The habit is managing your response to it. Long-term thinkers understand this. They don't try to predict every outcome. They prepare to adapt. They ask, if this doesn't work, can I recover? Not, will this work perfectly? This mindset changes how you approach decisions. Instead of seeking certainty, you seek resilience. Instead of asking for guarantees, you build flexibility. And this is where real freedom lies, because freedom isn't knowing exactly what will happen. Freedom is knowing you'll be okay even if it doesn't go as planned. In 2026, expect uncertainty, expect delays, expect detours, expect surprises, and stop interpreting them as signs you're doing something wrong. They are signs you are doing something real. People who grow comfortable with uncertainty make calmer decisions under pressure. They don't panic when things change. They don't collapse when plans fail. They adjust, and adjustment is a skill, a powerful one. Uncertainty teaches patience. It teaches humility. It teaches long-term thinking. It reminds you that control is limited, but influence is not. You can't control outcomes, but you can control preparation, effort, and attitude. When you accept uncertainty, you stop wasting energy on fear. That energy becomes available for thinking, learning, and building. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself this honestly: what decision am I avoiding because I want certainty that life doesn't offer? And then ask, what is the smallest step I could take not to eliminate uncertainty, but to move forward despite it? Sit with those questions, because the ability to live with uncertainty calmly and deliberately is one of the most powerful mindset habits you can develop in 2026. Chapter 05. Stop comparing invisible lives. Comparison doesn't usually arrive loudly. It slips in quietly. You scroll for a moment, you hear a story, you see someone else moving faster, earning more, living louder. And suddenly, without realizing it, your own life feels smaller. Nothing actually changed, but everything feels different. That's the danger of comparison. You are comparing your full reality to someone else's edited version. And no one wins that game. I once met someone who constantly felt behind. No matter what he achieved, it never felt like enough. When I asked him who he was comparing himself to, he mentioned people he followed online, people whose lives looked effortless. But here's what he didn't see: the stress behind their smiles, the debt behind their lifestyle, the anxiety behind their confidence. He was competing with a story, not a human being. In 2026, one of the most important habits you can build is learning how to stop comparing your inner world to someone else's outer performance, because comparison distorts reality. It makes normal progress feel slow. It makes patience feel like failure. It makes gratitude disappear. And the most dangerous part, you rarely compare upward realistically. You don't see the full cost of what others have. You only see the reward. Every visible success hides invisible trade-offs, long hours, sacrifices, stress, uncertainty. When you compare without seeing the full picture, you envy outcomes you might not actually want. Comparison also distracts you from the only race that matters, the one against who you were yesterday. Progress is personal. It depends on where you started, what you value, and what you're willing to endure. when you compare yourself to someone with a different starting point, different priorities, and different risks. The comparison becomes meaningless and harmful. In 2026, practice this habit. Compare direction, not position. Ask, am I moving forward even slowly? That question is honest and fair. Another truth most people avoid. Comparison often comes from uncertainty about your own values. When you don't know what enough looks like for you, other people's lives start defining it for you. That's why comparison disappears when purpose becomes clear. The more aligned you are with your own path, the less interested you become in someone else's. People who build lasting wealth, freedom, and peace rarely compare themselves obsessively. They are too busy building. They understand that attention is limited, and comparison wastes it. In 2026, protect your attention. Notice what triggers comparison in you. Certain platforms, certain conversations, certain people. This isn't about isolation. It's about awareness. You don't have to consume everything just because it's available. Another hidden cost of comparison is decision making. When you chase what others have, you stop thinking clearly. You rush, you copy, you abandon your own timeline. But copying someone else's path rarely leads to their outcome because you are not living their life. Their risks are not yours. Their tolerance is not yours. Their values are not yours. In 2026, build the habit of checking in with yourself before making decisions. Ask, is this choice aligned with my life or someone else's highlight reel? That question alone can save you years. Comparison also creates emotional instability. One day you feel inspired. The next day you feel inadequate. Your mood begins to depend on what you see, not what you do. But peace comes from internal benchmarks, from knowing your values, from measuring progress honestly, from respecting your own pace. Here's a quiet truth. The most fulfilled people you will ever meet are not the ones who won the comparison game. They are the ones who stopped playing it. In 2026, let others run their race. You focus on consistency, on patience, on building something that fits your life. And before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself gently and honestly, who am I comparing myself to right now? And then ask, what part of their life am I not seeing? Sit with those questions, because the moment you stop comparing invisible lives, you start appreciating your real one. And that shift rewires your mindset more than any external success ever could. Chapter 06, protect your attention. Your life is shaped less by what happens to you and more by what you pay attention to. This is easy to forget. Attention feels invisible. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like something that just happens. But attention is one of the most valuable resources you have, and in many ways it decides the quality of your thinking. I once met someone who felt constantly overwhelmed. He wasn't facing a crisis. Nothing dramatic was happening in his life, but his mind was always tired. He checked updates first thing in the morning. He scrolled during breaks. He consumed opinions constantly. By the end of the day, he felt drained without knowing why. The problem wasn't effort, it was exposure. In 2026, one of the most important habits you can build is learning how to protect your attention. Because what you repeatedly focus on becomes your inner voice. Fearful input creates fearful thinking. Chaotic input creates scattered decisions. Calm input creates clarity. Most people try to change their mindset without changing what they consume. That rarely works. Your mind is not broken, it's overstimulated. Every message, headline, argument, and opinion you absorb takes a small piece of your mental energy. Over time, that adds up. When attention is constantly pulled outward, reflection disappears. And without reflection, wisdom cannot grow. In 2026, protecting your attention is not about avoiding the world. It's about choosing depth over noise. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to react to everything. You don't need to have an opinion on everything. The habit is learning to pause before consuming. Ask yourself, is this adding clarity or stealing it? This question changes how you live. People who think long-term are careful with their attention. They don't allow every trend, crisis, or opinion to enter their mind. They understand something important. Not everything deserves access to your thoughts. This is especially true when it comes to wealth, freedom, and decision-making. Constant noise creates emotional reactions. Emotional reactions create poor decisions. When your attention is scattered, patience disappears. You become more impulsive, more reactive, more anxious. But when your attention is protected, something powerful happens. Your mind slows down, and slow minds make better choices. In 2026, begin practicing selective focus. Choose fewer inputs. Choose deeper ones. Instead of constant updates, choose understanding. Instead of endless opinions, choose reflection. This doesn't mean disconnecting completely. It means reconnecting intentionally. Another quiet benefit of protecting your attention is self-trust. When you are not constantly absorbing external voices, you begin to hear your own more clearly. Your values become clearer, your priorities settle, your decisions feel calmer. People who struggle with confidence often think they lack belief. In reality, they lack silence. Silence is where clarity lives. This habit also changes how you experience time. When your attention is constantly fragmented, days blur together. Life feels rushed even when nothing urgent is happening. But when attention is focused, time feels fuller. Moments feel intentional. Effort feels meaningful. In 2026, treat your attention like wealth. Don't spend it impulsively. Don't give it away to things that leave you poorer afterward. Notice what drains you. Notice what grounds you and choose accordingly. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what am I giving my attention to every day that gives me anxiety instead of clarity? And then ask, what would happen if I reduced that just a little? Sit with those questions, because the way you protect your attention is the way you protect your future thinking. And that habit quietly rewires your mindset in 2026. Chapter 07, Learn to Say Enough. Most people don't suffer because they have too little. They suffer because they don't know when to stop wanting more. More money, more approval, more recognition, more proof. The desire for more never announces itself as a problem. It disguises itself as ambition. And ambition, when unchecked, quietly steals peace. I once knew someone who kept moving the finish line of his life. Every time he reached a goal, he felt relief but never satisfaction. When asked what he was working toward, he paused. He didn't know. He was chasing a feeling, not a purpose. In 2026, one of the most powerful habits you can build is learning how to say enough. Not in a lazy way, in an intentional one. Enough doesn't mean giving up. It means deciding. It means choosing what truly matters and letting go of the rest. Many people think wanting more will make them happy, but wanting more without knowing why creates restlessness. There is always someone ahead. Always another level, always a higher number. If you don't define enough for yourself, the world will define it for you, and the world's definition is endless. Learning to say enough changes how you approach wealth. Money stops being a scoreboard. It becomes a tool. You stop asking, how do I get more? You start asking, what do I want my life to feel like? That question shifts everything. Enough also brings clarity. When you know what enough looks like, decisions become easier. You stop chasing opportunities that don't align. You stop trading time for validation. You stop confusing growth with accumulation. This habit creates freedom not because you have everything, but because you stop needing everything. People who know they're enough are calmer. They don't panic when others move faster. They don't envy lifestyles they don't want. They don't feel behind, they are anchored. In 2026, practice identifying you're enough. How much do you actually need to live well? How much recognition truly matters? How much is driven by fear rather than desire? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are liberating ones. Another quiet benefit of saying enough is gratitude. When you stop chasing endlessly, you notice what's already present. Time, health, relationships, peace of mind. Enough shifts your focus from scarcity to sufficiency, and that mindset leads to wiser decisions. People who don't know they're enough often take unnecessary risks. They sacrifice health for numbers. They trade relationships for status. But people who know they're enough protect what truly matters. They understand that more is only valuable if it improves life, not replaces it. In 2026, remember this: enough is not a limitation, it's a boundary, and boundaries create freedom. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what am I chasing right now that I don't actually need? And then ask, what would change if I allowed myself to feel complete before reaching it? Sit with those questions. Because the moment you learn to say enough, you stop living in pursuit and start living with intention. And that rewires your mindset in ways no amount of more ever could. Chapter 08 Build skills, not status. Most people chase the visible signs of success. Titles, recognition, fame, approval. They want the applause, the headlines, the validation. And there's nothing wrong with being recognized. But the problem comes when recognition becomes the goal instead of the result of meaningful work. I once met someone who spent years carefully crafting an image. He worked hard to look impressive. He networked constantly. He posted updates that made him look accomplished. On the surface, it worked. People admired him. He looked successful. But privately, he felt fragile. Every compliment felt like a lifeline. Every criticism felt like collapse, because he had invested in status, not substance. Contrast that with someone who quietly invests in skill. They don't brag. They don't rush to be noticed. They focus on mastery, on learning, on competence. Over time, their work speaks for itself. The difference is simple. Status is external. Skills are internal. And internal strengths last far longer. In 2026, one of the most transformative habits you can build is learning how to prioritize skill over status. Why? Because skills are durable, they compound, they create opportunities that status cannot. A skill set gives you options, options give you freedom. Freedom is what leads to lasting wealth, influence, and peace of mind. Status can be taken away at any moment. A skill cannot as long as you maintain it. Consider the difference between someone famous for a single viral success and someone quietly skilled in a craft for decades. One relies on luck and perception. The other relies on capability and effort. When the world changes markets, trends, opinions, skills adapt. Status does not. This habit also rewires your mindset. When you focus on status, you live reactively. Every comparison matters. Every judgment stings. Every delay feels personal. But when you focus on skills, you live proactively. Your decisions are based on growth. Your confidence comes from competence. Your progress is measured by improvement, not applause. Another benefit of building skills is resilience. People who chase recognition are fragile. They crumble under scrutiny. They panic when validation disappears. People who chase mastery are steady. They trust themselves. They know effort produces results over time, not always instantly, but consistently. In 2026, start small. Identify a skill that matters to you. Dedicate focused, consistent effort to it. Ignore applause. Ignore instant feedback. Focus on growth. Consistency matters more than speed. Depth matters more than breadth. Curiosity matters more than imitation. Skills create leverage in life. The more capable you are, the fewer compromises you must make. The fewer shortcuts you need, the more options you have to live according to your values. And there's a hidden reward. When you focus on skill, you stop comparing, because you measure progress internally, not externally. You notice improvement, you notice competence, you notice quiet momentum. The world may not notice, and that's okay, because the point is not to be applauded. The point is to be prepared. Prepared for opportunity. Prepared for challenges. Prepared for life itself. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, am I investing more in how I appear or in what I can actually do? And then ask, what is one skill I could start mastering this year, not for recognition, but for freedom? Sit with those questions, because the habit of building skills over status quietly rewires your mindset for long-term resilience, freedom, and fulfillment. Chapter 9. Expect setbacks without quitting. Life is rarely a straight line. No matter how carefully you plan, setbacks will come. Sometimes they are small, a delayed project, a missed opportunity, a disagreement. Sometimes they are large, a career derailment, a financial loss, a personal heartbreak. And most people don't fail because they weren't capable. They fail because they interpret setbacks as proof that they shouldn't continue. I once met someone who gave up on a promising venture after a single failure. The project had been going well until one obstacle appeared. He saw the obstacle as a verdict, not as a natural part of the process. He quit, and for years afterward, he regretted not persevering. This is the difference between those who achieve long-term success and those who stumble along the way. Setbacks are inevitable. Quitting is optional. In 2026, one of the most transformative habits you can develop is learning to expect setbacks without letting them stop you. This habit rewires your mindset from reactive to resilient, because setbacks are not a sign that you chose wrong. They are a sign that you are trying something real. Anything worthwhile involves risk. Anything meaningful involves uncertainty. Anything that grows unevenly. Most people assume failure is a dead end. Long-term thinkers understand that failure is data, it's information, it's feedback, it's a guide for adjustment. When you expect setbacks, you stop personalizing them. You stop saying, "This happened because I'm not good enough." You start saying, "This happened now, what can I learn?" This simple shift changes everything. It changes your confidence. It changes your patience. It changes your decision making. People who anticipate obstacles don't panic. They respond. They adapt. They continue. And here's something even more important. Setbacks reveal character. They show who you are under pressure. They teach endurance. They build habits that no success alone ever could. In 2026, adopt a mindset of preparedness rather than perfection. Don't hope that challenges won't appear. Hope that when they do, you will meet them with calm, creativity, and persistence. This habit also reduces fear. When you know setbacks will happen anyway, they stop feeling catastrophic. They stop freezing you into inaction. They stop making every decision terrifying. Instead, obstacles become part of the landscape. They are expected. They are manageable. They are temporary. Long-term thinkers also understand patience in setbacks. They don't measure success by immediate results. They measure it by direction, effort, and learning. because a temporary loss today can lead to a future advantage if handled wisely. This is especially true in wealth, relationships, and personal growth. People who quit when things get hard lose compounding effects financially, emotionally, and intellectually. People who persevere quietly accumulate benefits that are invisible in the short term. There's also an emotional benefit to expecting setbacks. You stop taking them personally. You stop letting them define your mood. You stop letting them define your story. Instead, setbacks become natural parts of your journey. You respond with clarity rather than emotion. Before we move on, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what setback am I treating like a catastrophe instead of a lesson? And then ask, how could I respond differently if I expected obstacles as part of the process? Sit with those questions, because the habit of expecting setbacks without quitting is one of the most powerful ways to rewire your mindset in 2026. It teaches patience. It builds resilience. It strengthens your ability to keep going when life gets hard. And in the long run, that ability matters far more than any shortcut ever could. Chapter 10 defines success on your OWN terms. Most people live their lives reacting to other people's definitions of success. They chase approval, they follow trends, they measure themselves against others' timelines, achievements, or standards, and slowly, without realizing it, they lose track of what truly matters to them. I once met someone who had everything, by conventional standards, a high-paying job, a nice house, recognition from peers. But when asked if he was happy, he paused for a long time, because he realized he had been living someone else's version of success, not his own. This is the quiet danger of life. You can achieve everything society says is valuable and still feel empty inside. In 2026, one of the most powerful habits you can cultivate is learning how to define success on your own terms. Because freedom begins here, not financial freedom, not fame, not approval. Freedom begins when you live by your values, not someone else's expectations. Defining your own success requires honesty. You must ask yourself, what matters to me? What kind of life feels meaningful, not just impressive? What would I choose if nobody were watching? These are uncomfortable questions, because they force you to face choices you may have avoided. They force you to confront habits that don't align with your values. They force you to admit where you've been following someone else's path. But this honesty is liberating. When you define success yourself, you stop chasing empty validation. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop sacrificing your peace for appearances, and something surprising happens. You begin to act with intention. Your choices become calmer. Your efforts become more focused. Your patience increases because you understand what truly matters. This habit also rewires how you view wealth. Money becomes a tool, not a trophy. It supports your life rather than defining it. You stop chasing more just because more is expected. You start accumulating what aligns with your purpose. Similarly, your approach to time changes. You stop giving attention to what doesn't matter. You stop participating in other people's races. You begin valuing presence over performance, substance over spectacle. And the most profound benefit of defining success yourself, you stop living reactively. You stop letting fear, comparison, or external judgment dictate your decisions. You start living deliberately. Most people never reach this point. They follow roads that feel safe, familiar, or prestigious, and they wonder why, despite achieving much, they still feel restless. Defining your own success is a habit of freedom. It requires courage. It requires reflection. It requires patience. But it is also the culmination of every other habit in this audiobook. Because when you stop rushing outcomes, detach self-worth from results, think in years, not days, accept uncertainty, stop comparing invisible lives, protect your attention, learn to say enough, build skills instead of chasing status, expect setbacks without quitting, you naturally arrive at the ability to define success on your own terms. You become someone who can navigate life calmly, intelligently, and deliberately. You understand that life is not about impressing others. It's about aligning daily actions with long-term values. And that alignment more than anything else produces peace, freedom, and fulfillment. Before we close, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what does success mean to me, not to anyone else, not to society, not to trends, but to me? And then ask, what is one action I could take today that reflects that definition, no matter how small? Sit with those questions, write them down, return to them often. Because the habit of defining success on your own terms quietly rewires your mindset, guides your choices, and ensures that 2026 becomes the year you live intentionally, not reactively. And in the end, that is the most profound transformation any of us can achieve. A life lived on your own terms, with calm clarity, with patient endurance, with deep, quiet freedom. Outro a NEW mindset for 2026. You've now walked through 10 habits that have the power to quietly, profoundly, and permanently rewire your mindset. These are not quick fixes. They are not strategies for instant success. They are principles for a life lived intentionally with patience, clarity, and courage. In 2026, the world will continue to pull you in 1,000 directions. It will tempt you with shortcuts, comparisons, and noise. It will test your patience, your resilience, and your focus. But now, you carry something different, a mindset that knows how to stay calm when life feels uncertain, a mindset that understands growth is slow, setbacks are part of the process, and success is defined by your own values, not anyone else's. A mindset that protects your attention, invests in skill, and celebrates meaningful effort over fleeting recognition. These habits will not make life effortless. They will make life clearer. They will make your choices wiser. They will make your journey deeply your own. So take a moment to reflect. Choose one habit you will begin practicing today. And then tomorrow, practice it again. Small, consistent steps create the kind of change that compounds quietly until one day it feels unstoppable. Remember, life is not a race. It is a direction. And the most powerful direction is the one you choose consciously, thoughtfully, and without fear. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your own growth. May 2026 be the year your mindset evolves, your patience strengthens, and your life begins to reflect the values, clarity, and calm power you deserve.